You are not alone. You are simply awake. And there is a difference between loneliness and awakening that most people never fully understand because the world teaches people how to stay busy, how to stay distracted, how to stay entertained, but almost never teaches them how to sit quietly with themselves, how to understand the strange silence that appears when the noise of the crowd disappears. And so when a person begins to wake up, when they begin to see beyond the routine conversations, beyond the fake smiles, beyond the endless race for approval, money, validation, status, and meaningless comparison, they often feel isolated at first, not because they are truly abandoned, but because their eyes have started to notice what others are still sleeping through. And awakening has always been a lonely road in the beginning because awareness changes the way you look at people, the way you look at society, the way you look at your own thoughts, your fears, your desires. And suddenly, the things that once excited you no longer hold the same power. The crowds feel louder but emptier. The conversations feel repetitive. The celebrations feel temporary. And even relationships begin to reveal whether they were built on truth or merely convenience. And this realization can feel heavy because the human heart naturally wants connection, wants understanding, wants someone to say, "I see what you see." But often awakening begins before you find such people. And so there comes a period where you sit alone with thoughts too deep for casual conversation, emotions too real for surface-level friendships, questions too important to ignore. And in those moments you may think something is wrong with you, but nothing is wrong with you at all. You are simply becoming conscious in a world that rewards unconscious living. You are becoming aware in a society that often fears awareness, because awareness cannot be easily controlled, easily manipulated, or easily distracted. And that is why awakening feels uncomfortable, because it pulls you away from illusions you once called reality. It removes the mask from faces, including your own. It forces you to confront truths you avoided for years. And truth is rarely comfortable in the beginning. But discomfort does not mean destruction. Sometimes discomfort is the sound of growth happening inside you. Sometimes the soul becomes restless because it can no longer survive inside lies. And perhaps this is why you feel different lately. Why certain places no longer feel like home. Why certain people no longer understand you. Why your heart craves depth instead of noise, meaning instead of attention, peace instead of constant stimulation. And maybe you miss the old version of yourself sometimes. The version that could laugh without thinking deeply. The version that fit easily into conversations, trends, and expectations. But deep inside, you know that version of yourself was asleep. And once the mind wakes up, it cannot fully return to ignorance because awareness changes everything. Awareness makes you notice how many people are exhausted from pretending, how many smiles are hiding sadness, how many friendships are built on fear of being alone, how many dreams are sacrificed just to fit into systems that reward obedience more than authenticity. And once you begin to notice these things, you start searching for something real, something deeper than performance, deeper than social approval, deeper than temporary pleasure. And this search can feel lonely because not everyone is ready for depth. Not everyone wants truth. Many people would rather stay comfortable inside familiar illusions than question the foundation of their lives. And you cannot force them to wake up, just as nobody could force you before your own moment arrived, because awakening is deeply personal. It happens quietly, slowly, painfully, often through heartbreak, disappointment, betrayal, failure, silence, or loss. And perhaps the pain you experienced was not meaningless after all. Perhaps the nights you cried alone were not signs of weakness, but invitations toward awareness. Because suffering has a strange way of opening human eyes, it strips away distractions and asks the soul what truly matters. And sometimes the answer is not success, not fame, not validation, but peace, honesty, purpose, connection, and inner freedom. Yet the path toward those things requires courage, because awakening demands that you stop betraying yourself for acceptance. It demands that you stop shrinking your truth to fit into rooms where authenticity is unwelcome. And this is why many awakened people feel misunderstood, because they can no longer fully participate in shallow games they once accepted. They start questioning everything. Why people chase approval from strangers. Why happiness is treated like a performance online. Why society glorifies overworking while emotional emptiness grows inside millions. Why people fear silence so much that they constantly fill every moment with noise, scrolling, entertainment, gossip, and distraction. And the more aware you become, the more clearly you see that many people are not truly living but merely surviving patterns handed down to them without question. And you begin to wonder whether life was meant to be more than this endless cycle of stress, competition, and pretending, and that question itself is a sign of awakening. Because sleeping minds rarely question the system deeply, they simply follow it automatically. But once you awaken, you begin searching for meaning beyond external achievements. You start craving alignment between your soul and your actions. You begin realizing that peace cannot be purchased, authenticity cannot be faked, and fulfillment cannot come from becoming someone you are not. And perhaps this realization has separated you from certain people because awakening changes your energy. It changes what you tolerate, what you value, what you seek. And not everyone will grow with you. Some relationships exist only for certain chapters. Some people only understand the version of you that was smaller, quieter, more convenient. And when you begin changing, they may call you distant, strange, emotional, dramatic, or different. But different is not always bad. Sometimes different means evolving. And evolution often requires leaving behind environments that no longer nourish your spirit, even when doing so hurts. Because growth and grief often walk together, every transformation contains a form of loss, the loss of old identities, old beliefs, old attachments, old illusions. And grieving those things is natural. But do not mistake grief for failure, because the caterpillar must lose its old form before it becomes something capable of flight. And maybe your loneliness is not punishment but transition. Maybe your solitude is preparing you to hear your own voice clearly for the first time without the constant influence of others. Because most people spend their entire lives disconnected from themselves. They know everyone else's expectations but not their own truth. They know how to impress others but not how to understand their own soul. And awakening reverses that process. It pulls your attention inward. It asks uncomfortable questions like, who are you beneath your roles, beneath your social image, beneath your fears, beneath the versions of yourself created for survival? And answering these questions takes time, patience, and honesty, which is why awakening cannot be rushed. It unfolds layer by layer, truth by truth, wound by wound. And some days you will feel strong while other days you will feel exhausted. Because awareness increases emotional sensitivity. You begin noticing energies, intentions, patterns, and emotional undercurrents you once ignored. And this can become overwhelming if you are not careful, which is why protecting your peace becomes essential, not out of selfishness but out of necessity. Because awakened minds cannot thrive in constant chaos. They need silence, reflection, nature, creativity, meaningful connection, and emotional honesty. And slowly you start understanding that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. Solitude can become sacred when it helps you reconnect with yourself, when it teaches you how to enjoy your own presence instead of fearing it, because the ability to sit peacefully with yourself is one of the greatest forms of freedom, and perhaps that is what your journey is trying to teach you now. That your worth is not measured by how many people surround you, how many messages you receive, how much attention you gain, or how perfectly you fit into society's expectations. Your worth exists independently of all those things. But modern culture rarely teaches this truth because insecure people are easier to influence, easier to manipulate, easier to sell things to. And awakening often begins the moment you stop seeking identity from the outside world and start searching within. And this inner search changes everything. Because you begin understanding that many fears were inherited, many insecurities were conditioned, many desires were programmed into you by comparison and social pressure. And once you see this clearly, you start reclaiming your mind, your attention, your energy, your life, and this process can feel isolating because not everyone around you will understand why you no longer care about superficial things the way you once did. But understanding from others is not always necessary for transformation. Sometimes the journey requires walking through uncertainty alone, until your inner clarity becomes stronger than external confusion. And during this process, you may feel emotionally tired, because awakening is not merely intellectual. It is emotional, spiritual, psychological, and deeply human. It shakes your identity, exposes your wounds, challenges your habits, and forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. But this confrontation is not cruelty, it is liberation, because every false layer removed brings you closer to authenticity. And authenticity is where real peace begins, not the peace of perfection, but the peace of honesty, the peace that comes from no longer performing constantly, no longer hiding endlessly, no longer betraying yourself for acceptance. And perhaps that is why your soul feels restless now, because it is tired of masks, tired of noise, tired of living disconnected from truth. And while this awakening may feel lonely today, remember that loneliness is often temporary, while self-awareness becomes permanent, and eventually you will find others who recognize your depth, others who value honesty over performance, connection over convenience, meaning over distraction. But before those people arrive, life often teaches you how to become whole within yourself first, because relationships built from wholeness are very different from relationships built from emptiness. And many people seek others not from love, but from fear of themselves, while awakening teaches you to stop escaping your inner world and start understanding it, healing it, accepting it. And there is incredible power in that process, even when it feels painful. Because pain that leads toward truth is different from pain that keeps you trapped, and maybe your current discomfort is the discomfort of transformation, like eyes adjusting to light after years in darkness. Because awakening is not about becoming superior to others. It is about becoming conscious of reality, conscious of yourself, conscious of how fragile and precious life truly is, and conscious people often feel emotions deeply because they understand impermanence. They understand how temporary everything can be, how quickly time passes, how many people live without ever truly expressing themselves honestly, and this awareness can create both sadness and gratitude at the same time. Sadness for the illusions people remain trapped inside, and gratitude for the opportunity to wake up before life ends. Because there is something tragic about reaching the end of existence without ever truly knowing yourself. And perhaps that fear is what pushes you forward now. The desire to live authentically before it is too late. The desire to experience real connection instead of endless performance. The desire to build a life aligned with your soul, rather than one designed only to impress others. And if that desire separates you from certain crowds, then maybe separation is necessary, because not every path is meant to be crowded. Some paths require silence, so the soul can hear itself clearly. And yes, there will be moments where you question yourself, moments where you wonder whether ignorance would have been easier, whether sleeping through life would have hurt less. But deep down you already know you cannot unknow what you have seen. You cannot return fully to pretending after recognizing the emptiness hidden beneath so many distractions. And though awakening can feel heavy, it also brings freedom. The freedom to choose consciously, the freedom to stop living automatically, the freedom to define success on your own terms, instead of inherited expectations. And this freedom is priceless even when it comes with temporary loneliness, because temporary loneliness is far less dangerous than permanent self-betrayal. And one day you will realize that the solitude you feared actually saved you, because it forced you to develop depth, emotional strength, self-awareness, creativity, intuition, and inner peace. Things that constant distraction could never provide. And slowly you will stop seeing yourself as isolated and start seeing yourself as connected differently, connected not through superficial noise but through awareness itself, because there are countless people across the world experiencing the same awakening silently. People questioning the same systems, feeling the same emotional exhaustion, searching for the same authenticity. And though you may not see them yet, you are not as alone as you think. Your experience is part of something deeply human, the timeless journey of consciousness awakening within ordinary lives. And throughout history, every person who chose truth over illusion walked through periods of misunderstanding. Every thinker, artist, philosopher, spiritual seeker, and truth teller experienced moments where society could not fully understand them, because awareness often appears strange to those who remain asleep But eventually, the same awareness that isolates you also guides you toward meaningful connection, because authenticity acts like a signal. It draws real people closer while pushing false relationships away. And while losing false connections can hurt, keeping them often hurts more in the long run, because nothing drains the soul faster than pretending constantly. And perhaps you are finally becoming tired of pretending, tired of acting okay when you are not, tired of shrinking your thoughts so others remain comfortable, tired of sacrificing your peace for acceptance. And this exhaustion itself may be a blessing, because sometimes the soul becomes exhausted precisely so transformation can begin, because people rarely change deeply while comfort remains intact. It is often discomfort that pushes growth forward, discomfort that breaks old patterns, discomfort that reveals hidden truths. And if you are in such a season right now, do not panic. Not every painful chapter is punishment. Some chapters are preparation, some are awakening, some are clearing space for a more honest life. And although the process may feel uncertain, trust that clarity grows slowly, like sunrise, not instantly but gradually. And one day you will look back and understand why certain people left, why certain illusions collapsed, why certain nights felt unbearably lonely, because those experiences were shaping your awareness, strengthening your inner foundation, teaching you how to stand alone without abandoning yourself. And once a person learns that lesson, they become far less controlled by fear, because fear loses power when you realize your value does not depend entirely on external validation. And this realization changes the way you move through life. You become calmer, more intentional, less desperate for approval, more selective about what energy you allow around you. And though others may misunderstand this change, you will know it is growth, not arrogance. Because awakening is not about feeling above others, but about feeling honest within yourself. And honesty creates peace even when life remains imperfect. Because perfection was never the goal, awareness was, authenticity was, inner alignment was. And maybe that is why you are reading these words now. Because some part of your soul already knows that what you are experiencing is not merely loneliness but transformation, not merely isolation but awakening, not merely confusion but the beginning of deeper understanding. And though the journey ahead may still contain uncertainty, remember this truth carefully and carry it gently within your heart. You are not alone. You are simply awake, and awakening always feels lonely before it becomes freedom.